CUB, or the Citizens Utility Board, is a not-for-profit statewide utility watchdog organization. CUB was created in 1983 to lower gas, electric, and telephone rates. CUB works to block utility rate hikes, win refunds, help pass important consumer protection laws. Joey Lee joined the CUB team as a carbon-free buildings coordinator in 2023 after she earned her master's in public policy from the University of Illinois at Chicago. She is an on-the-ground organizer who builds grassroots support for reducing the amount of carbon that is wasted to the atmosphere from heating our buildings. Her favorite work is engaging directly with residents, developing accessible tools and resources, and then helping demystify decarbonization. Please join me in welcoming Joey Lee.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Yes, perfect. Okay, awesome. This is a very fancy setup you guys have here. Let me get set up real quick. Perfect. Cool. So I just want to share a little bit more. Is that too loud? No, we're good? Yeah. Okay. I just want to share a little bit more about the Citizens Utility Board before we get started, but thank you, Belle, so much for that introduction. So we advocate for affordable and sustainable energy policies here in Illinois. We represent utility ratepayers, which is all of us, at the Illinois Commerce Commission, the Illinois General Assembly, as well as the court system. We also have a hotline. So if you have a utility question, you don't know what all these numbers on your bill mean, please give us a call, and we will help you kind of sort through any issues you have with your utility bills. So that would be gas, electric, TV and phone bills that we would be able to help you with. And then we also do these kinds of outreach events. So I'm hoping to get my colleague out here to talk about solar soon, but today we are going to be talking about geothermal and decarbonizing our buildings. So did you know that we're burning fossil fuels inside of our homes? So I think when a lot of us think about burning fossil fuels, we think about coal plants or maybe the tailpipe of a diesel car, but we're not thinking about the spaces we spend so much of our time in, right? And that's a lot of us. Nearly 80% of Illinois residents rely on burning gas for heating. There are 4 main ways that we do this inside of our home, and they are going to be for space heating, for water heating, for cooking, and for clothes drying. Obviously, the big ticket item there is going to be for space heating. For space heating. So that's the biggest way that we burn fossil fuels inside of our homes. So what is building decarbonization? That may be a term that you've heard before. I've mentioned it a few times today. And what it means is that it's ensuring that the energy that we use to power and heat our buildings doesn't result in further greenhouse gas emissions. This is really important for our emission goals and our climate goals because roughly 2/3 of our state's emissions come from buildings. So that's a really big portion of our emissions, right? And one way to do this is to electrify our homes and to decarbonize our homes. Now, this is not a perfect fix, right? Our electricity grid is far from perfect and it's far from clean, but we are on a pathway to clean it up, right? So there are pieces of legislation in Illinois, like the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act that passed in 2021 that put us on a path to achieve a carbon-free power sector by 2045. I think we're a little bit behind meeting those goals, but it is something that we're working towards. And so one way to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions in your home is through electrifying. There are also, I want to go over some of the main reasons you might be interested in decarbonizing. And the 3 big ones are going to be for affordability, for climate change, and for your health. We'll go over these a little bit more in depth. So the first reason is affordability. Gas is expensive, not only the gas that we're using in our buildings, but the gas system is really expensive. We have some of the highest fixed fees in the Midwest here in Illinois. So that is the amount you're paying regardless of how much gas you're using, right? It's about, I think in people's gas territory and in NICOR gas territory, it's about $30-$40 that you're paying a month, even if you were to use no gas, right? And last year, Illinois gas utilities tried to raise our rates by more than $900 million. That's an immense and a record rate hike in the state of Illinois. Organizations like CUB fought back. We were able to rein in some of their spending, but as you can see, these are still incredibly high rate hikes. So we know that our gas system is old, it's inefficient, and it's unaffordable for a lot of people. We also know that gas is historically a more volatile market than electricity. So I know it gets a little small at the end, but this graph starts back from 1967. You can just see that the price of gas fluctuates a lot more than the price of electricity. Another reason you might be interested in decarbonizing your home is for climate change. And that's because natural gas is made up of predominantly methane, and methane has an incredible global warming capacity, over 84 times the global warming potential of CO2 over a 20-year time frame. So because our building sector is such a huge portion of our state's emissions, tackling the building sector is going to be really key to tackling climate change. And then the third reason is for cleaner indoor air. So gas burning appliances like your stove, your water heater emit dangerous air pollution into our indoor air. This is things like nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, general particulate matter, formaldehyde, and benzene. And 21% of childhood asthma cases in Illinois are attributable to gas stove usage. That is the highest of any state in the nation. I think this makes sense, right? Children are small, their lungs are smaller, they're spending a lot of times indoors, and so they are more susceptible. But that doesn't mean that burning gas inside of our homes isn't harmful for the rest of us as well. But it's not all doom and gloom, don't worry. I'm going to go over geothermal specifically today, which is one of the technologies that we have to move beyond gas. But like I talked about, there are 4 main ways that we burn fossil fuels inside of our homes: for space heating, for cooking, for water heating, and for clothes drying. And we have the technology available on the market to transition away from these gas burning alternatives. As you can see, their electric counterparts look really similar. So you can start to see how you might be able to swap out appliances you have at home, gas burning ones, for electric ones. Okay, heat pumps. I want to go over kind of the very basics of how a heat pump works, and then we'll talk a little bit more specifically about ground source heat pumps, which is also sometimes called geothermal. So heat pumps, instead of burning a fuel to generate heat, it simply moves it from one location, which is called the source, to another location. There are 2 main types of heat pumps: ground source and air source, and they both work really similarly. The major difference being that source that we talked about, right? Or where heat is being drawn from. That's either going to be from the air or from the ground, like the name implies. There are other technologies inside of our home that utilize this kind of technology, this idea of moving heat or cooling from one side to the other rather than generating it. And one example is your refrigerator. So your refrigerator moves cold air from outside to the inside of the refrigerator, which is why on the back of the refrigerator or at the side, it's a little warmer, right? That's because it's pushing that hot air out from the refrigerator into your kitchen. So these technologies are not new, and heat pumps are going to be best suited for buildings with ducted and forced air systems. It's not impossible for other systems like floor radiator heating or for floor heating, but it is going to be best suited and a more simple swap out if you have forced air. Ground source heat pumps work by digging hundreds of feet into the ground, and they dig these gigantic holes into the ground. They're called boreholes. The ground is a really great source of energy because the temperature, once you go a couple hundred feet down, is really stable year round, probably sits at around 50 degrees. And because the temperature is stable underground year round, the heat pump doesn't lose efficiency as the air temperature changes. That's a concern that you might have heard if you're familiar with air source heat pumps. Once the temperature drops down, it starts to lose efficiency, although the technology has come a really, really long way. Geothermal doesn't have to deal with any of that because the temperature under the ground is stable year round. Ground source heat pumps are also going to be a far more efficient and generally superior option to air source heat pumps. The EPA states that energy consumption and corresponding emissions are decreased up to 44% compared to air source heat pumps. Of course, these systems are a little bit more expensive. You have to first even think about digging these gigantic holes into the ground. And that's going to create a big barrier for a lot of people. But we're going to talk about how you might go about financing these types of projects in a minute. But before we go, we cannot talk about heat pumps. We can't talk about decarbonization without also talking about energy efficiency. And that is because the cheapest and the cleanest energy is the energy that you simply don't use, right? So the NRDC released a study that said that every dollar spent on efficiency saves you $3 in energy costs. So it's a good investment of your money. What might energy efficiency look like? It might look like weatherizing your home. It might look like using energy efficient lighting, unplugging your appliances when you go on vacation, utilizing your programmable thermostat, things like that. These are all things that we can do to improve our energy efficiency. That's going to allow our electric appliances to run at their full capacity, use less electricity to begin with, and ultimately benefit our health, our wallets, and our environments. If you are like, oh my God, I'm so excited about geothermal energy, I'm so excited about heat pumps, where do I start? This would be the place to start. It is called a home energy audit. It's going to make sure that your home has a good insulation, that your building envelope is really tight, so that your electricity bills don't skyrocket when you switch over. So this is a service. It should cost you a couple $100s. There are also tax credits for it that we'll be going over shortly, don't worry, to help you subsidize that cost. But this is a really in-depth understanding and assessment of your home to understand where you're using the most energy, where you're losing the most energy. So a home energy audit might tell you, oh, in your home, you're losing a vast majority of your energy through your windows. So then you would know, oh, before I'm thinking about getting a geothermal heat pump or some other sort of heat pump, I know that I really need to address the leakage that's happening in my windows. So this will give you a really good sense of where your building stands. And especially if you live in an older building, a less efficient building, this is going to be a really important first step to make sure, like I said, like those bills don't skyrocket when you switch over to electricity. Okay, sorry to stick a chart at you so early in the morning. I know this is a little bit complex, but these are all of the consumer or most of the consumer-facing tax credits and rebates available through the IRA or the Inflation Reduction Act. It passed in 2022. It is a very large investment to tackle the climate crisis and to invest in clean energy across the country. These incentives, along with state incentives, along with utility incentives, are going to make the next couple of years some of the best times to make energy and efficiency upgrades to your home. There are so many programs available through the IRA, but these are the primary consumer-facing ones. We'll get a little bit into how, if you are a tax-exempt entity like a senior center like this one or a house of worship, how you might be able to access some of these tax credits for your organization. But we'll be going over the three main ones today that I have highlighted with electric bolts. But before we get started, I do want to explain a little bit of this color coding system that I have going on here. So you'll see that the main incentives come in either green or blue. Green are going to be tax credits, and blue are going to be rebates. So tax credits are the things that are available now, and rebates, likely we won't see them until next year. And that's being a little bit optimistic. There are a few notable differences between tax credits and rebates that I want to go over before we dig into these tax credits and rebates. The first is going to be how you access that incentive. A tax credit is where you spend the money up front, you keep the receipts, you hand them over to your tax person, and when you file your taxes, you'll file an extra form. This is different from a rebate, which is really, when it rolls out, we are anticipating them to roll out like coupons. So in theory, you would be able to walk into a Lowe's or into an Apt, get your electric clothes dryer, and access the rebate at the point of sale. They also differ in terms of budget. So you can see on the rightmost column that these tax credits have unlimited total budgets. They are completely dependent on how much people take advantage of them compared to these rebate programs that are capped. So once that money is gone, we don't know what the program will look like after, but for the tax credits, we know that those have kind of unlimited program budgets. One final thing is target population and income qualification. So a lot of the tax credits, the main tax credits are available to anyone who owes taxes, but some of these other programs that we're going to be looking at are really geared towards non-high income households and low and moderate income households. We'll get a little bit more into what that means in a second. So we just talked about how important energy efficiency and weatherization is when you start to think about decarbonizing your home. And this is going to be the tax credit that kind of helps you subsidize those costs. So starting in January of 2023 and for each year for the next decade, all consumers can claim a tax credit for 30% of the cost of qualified projects up to $1,200 annually. So if you had multiple little things that you needed to do in sequence, you could split up those projects over multiple years and access this credit. So these are the caps. Of course, this is not tax guidance. I'm not a CPA. I'm just providing you with general guidance that's provided to us by the IRS. So if you are planning on accessing any of these incentives, you should definitely go on the IRS website, check with your tax person to make sure that all of the nuts and bolts are figured out. But there's also an additional one-time $2,000 tax credit for upgrading a space or a water heater that does not count towards the annual tax credit. So that means that for 10 years, you could qualify, or for 9 years, you could qualify for the $1,200. And for 1 year, you could claim that annual credit and the one-time credit for a total credit of $3,200. The next is going to be the residential clean energy tax credit, which includes geothermal heat pumps, the technology that we just talked about. Starting in January 2023, and for the next year, and for each year for the next decade, all consumers can claim a tax credit for 30% of the cost of qualified projects. You'll notice that this does not have an annual cap. The credit percentage will phase down to 26% in 2033, and then they're looking to scale it down. This includes things like solar panels on your home. For things like solar panels, there are also state incentives. So if you were really interested in solar panels, you could stack this federal incentive with a state incentive and really bring down your initial capital costs. Same with geothermal heat pumps. So you could claim a tax credit for 30% of the cost of the qualified project. And also this one includes battery storage. Next, we have the electrification and appliance rebates. I think this is the one that generally has more buzz and people have heard about it a little bit more, but this is specifically designed for low and moderate income folks. So you have to fit into a certain income qualification to be eligible for these dollars. It is based on something called area median income. So it's very granular. So it might be worth going home and checking. You might not think you are eligible, and then you look and it's based on your where you live. So you might be eligible. So if you are at 80% of the area median income, you could qualify, you could claim a rebate covering the full price of the appliance up to the caps on the screen. And if you are at 150% of AMI, you can claim a rebate up to 50% of the cost of appliances up to the caps on the screen. So this is really to help low and moderate income folks transition away from gas. So we're looking at things like an electric stove, insulation, and then also things that your home may need to accommodate this technology. So your home may need updated electrical wiring or updated electric panels. And this is all kind of thought into the way that this program has been designed. So there's money for the appliances, but also for the technology and the upgrades you may need to accommodate those appliances. There are also much smaller rebates, but still rebates and coupons through our utility providers. So I know we're in ComEd territory right now. So ComEd will, you could qualify for a rebate for up to $6,000 for a geothermal heat pump. Again, not as big of a tax credit or a cost break as the tax credit, but still these are stackable. So it's good to take advantage of and think about how you might be able to stack them. There are also, I know our goal is to eventually get off of gas, hopefully, but there are, in the meantime, there are incentives that we can take advantage of, and these are largely going to be for energy efficiency and for weatherization. So you can see NICOR has rebates for air sealing, attic insulation, duct sealing, wall insulation, and all of those things. Now, you may have heard of something called direct pay. which is, I think the proper term is elective pay, but most people say direct pay. So direct pay is part of the IRA, and for the first time, it allows tax-exempt and governmental entities to be able to receive a payment equal to the full value of the tax credit for buildings qualifying and clean energy projects. In general, an applicable entity can use elective pay with respect to these 12 credits as long as it meets the tax credit's underlying requirements. So there's many tax credits through the IRA, but only 12 of them are eligible for direct pay. The steps for direct pay are a little bit more different. So this is kind of if you were thinking of a project for your house of worship or another tax-exempt entity, you would first identify the project and the credit you want to use, complete the project, place it into service, determine when that tax return will be due, and then you have to pre-file registration with the IRS before the tax return is due. Once you receive the registration number, you'll need that number to file the taxes for your tax-exempt entity, and then you would receive a direct payment for the amount that you've qualified for. Okay, so these are just some of the energy generation and carbon capture tax credits that can be taken advantage of for tax-exempt entities. So if you are looking at something like geothermal, you would be looking at the investment tax credit for energy property. Projects located in something called an energy community, so communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the uses of gas and things like that, do qualify for an extra 10% of the credit. I believe the closest energy community to here is going to be Waukegan, as well as the southwest suburbs of Chicago. You also need to meet a requirement called the PWA, or a prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirement. This just means that you have to do a little bit more work with the Department of Labor and planning your project to ensure that everyone that's working on the project is being paid the prevailing wage, including fringe benefits for all of the construction work that's happening. This is just to ensure that we are building our economy around clean jobs as well. I do want to provide you with a little bit of a case study of a church in Oak Park, Illinois, that is on its path to being carbon neutral. And so this is all of the projects that they've done. They've done quite an immense amount of projects. They did energy efficiency. It's about 22,000 square feet, first of all. They did energy efficiency upgrades in 2011. They did the audit that we talked about, identified things that needed to be done to properly handle the equipment that they were wanting to get, which was geothermal. They got geothermal in 2012. Then they got solar in 2014, and then something called community solar in 2021. So this chart is showing you how much they were paying for electricity and gas and how much that cost has decreased from pre-energy efficiency to all the way after geothermal, solar, and community solar. So community solar is, let's say you live in a condo or you live in a really shady area, and for whatever reason, you cannot get solar panels on your roof. This is a way where you could subscribe to the output of a solar farm somewhere else in the community, and you can use that energy instead of what ComEd is providing. So this is a great alternative for folks who can't get solar or to supplement solar. So you can see that they've brought down their electricity costs in 2022 to zero by using solar and community solar. They still do use a tiny bit of gas, but that's honestly a really minimal amount compared to how much they were budgeting for gas in 2009. I really suggest you reaching out to, if you are someone who's like, I really want to get geothermal for my house of worship, I would suggest reaching out to some of these entities to see who they worked with, what their process looked like, if they have any learnings they want to share with you. I also did a little more research to find places in this area that also have geothermal. There's quite a few. So the Wilmette Public Library maintains 4 geothermal wells, so that's not a lot of wells. And it covers a portion of their building's heating and cooling. So that will just kind of help alleviate the gas burden as well as your emissions, as well as some of the schools in the Glencoe School District. So I know West Elementary School maintains around 40 wells alone. That sounds like maybe enough to do a whole wing of a building, but I'm not exactly sure. I couldn't find a whole lot of information about it. And then as well as a Montessori school in Evanston that maintains 7 wells for a wing of their building. I really, if you are trying to take up a project like this, I really suggest reaching out to these places to kind of understand their lived experience. And I want to go over the next steps with you if you're really interested in this technology. The first thing we always say is that you need to start planning now. This is a long and tedious process. You cannot wait till your old heating and cooling system fails. Your installer will need time to route permitting papers through your municipality. The second is going to be to do energy efficiency, to weatherize your home, to weatherize your building. And the third is to shop around for a quality heat pump installer. We really recommend getting at least 3 quotes to make sure that you are comfortable with an installer's professionalism, competency, their price, all of these things. One of the most asked questions that we get at Pub is, do you have a list of contractors? Is there someone you can direct us to? And unfortunately, we do not maintain a list of contractors, that we do not vet contractors. But I do have some tips for you on how you might find a qualified installer. The first is to check with your local network, check with those schools and those churches that we just talked about. I think that I've also heard of people having enormous success in Facebook groups and community groups like this one. You can also look for contractors certified and trained through either manufacturers, utility companies, or professional alliances. So if you wanted to take advantage of the ComEd incentives, you would need to work with a contractor that's certified through their network. So that might be a great place to start. There are also professional associations like the Geothermal Alliance of Illinois, as well as the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association. Those places all maintain their own lists as well. That's a great place to start, although again, not foolproof. And I think the final tip is just to ask questions. A contractor who is professional and wants to work with you will take the time to walk you through these questions. Some of the questions you might ask is, how many heat pump systems have you personally designed and installed? Will I need to hire my own electrician to provide electrical work, which is likely the case if you live in an older building? Do you register the heat pump with a manufacturer? The answer should be yes. Things like this. I know that we covered a lot of information today, and I just want to direct you to a resource on the Citizens Utility Board website. We have an entire page on electrification. So almost everything that I've spoken about today can be found on this page. It's under our website if you go under resources into electrification. And I believe that is it for me. Thank you so much.
Can you explain Clear Choice Energy and what that is about?
So Clear Choice Energy, I'm assuming you've gotten one of their mailers before. I get them frequently as well. They are something called an alternative retailer. So wherever you live, ComEd delivers your electricity to you, but they don't necessarily have to generate it. So what Clear Choice is doing is saying, we'll allow ComEd to deliver it to your house, but we want to be the supplier of your electricity. That rate is almost always higher than what ComEd is charging. It might be good to check. Sometimes you'll get a really good deal, but I've not met a single person that has gotten a good deal through an alternative retail supplier. On the back of your ComEd bill, there's something called a price to compare. So they'll tell you how much they're charging you per kilowatt. I don't want to misspeak, but I actually don't want to misspeak, so I don't want to say what the price to compare is, but it will change twice a year and it's always on the back of your bill. So when you get a mailer, they'll tell you, this is our current going price for electricity. They'll tell you so then you can compare with your ComEd bill to understand, is this a good deal or not? But it's usually not a very good deal.
Hold on.
Hello, I live near Willow and Shermer. There's a set of train tracks that cross Willow Road. And every day there is a train that goes northbound with hundreds of cars filled with coal from southern Illinois. And it goes to Wisconsin Power and Electric, where they use the coal to produce electricity that we cannot use in Illinois because it's soft coal. But of course, where does that smoke go? It doesn't stay in Wisconsin.
Right.
So what happens with things like that? Who controls the changes that are going to come from that? And the second part of my question is, what is used to produce our electricity in our area, do we use
Mhm.
fossil fuels?
Yes, we do. That is the unfortunate reality of kind of where we are in this journey. You can go online to ComEd's website and they will tell you exactly the breakdown of your electricity generation. Our electricity generation is a lot of natural gas, a lot of coal, a lot of nuclear, all things that are not good for us and our environment. I think one of the reasons that we advocate for electrification is that our electricity can be cleaned up. We can rely on wind, solar, and our renewables. There is no way to clean up gas, right? Gas is what it is. It's predominantly methane, and there's no way to clean it up. There are a lot of really smart people working to try to clean up our power sector right now. That's happening kind of adjacent to this electrification work. But I do completely hear what you're saying. We have a long way to go before our electricity generation in the state is clean.
So you talked about the efficiency of geothermal in using a heat pump. Could you address if you wanted to use a heat pump but not drill 100-foot deep holes in your property, or you didn't have the property?
Mhm.
Heat pumps, my understanding is, can also be used to get heat and cooling out of the air.
Mhm.
What is the relative efficiency of those, and how would that work?
So geothermal is a much more superior and efficient technology, but it is also a much more expensive technology. There are things called air source heat pumps, and that technology has come a long way as well. It looks a lot like an air conditioning unit that you have outside of your home, and it does, like a geothermal, both heating and cooling. There's a whole subcategory of air source heat pumps specifically designed for cold climates like we have here. They're called cold climate heat pumps, just like the name suggests. So that would be kind of what you're looking into. They do lose efficiency as the temperature drops, but there are now heat pumps that can well accommodate sub-zero temperatures.
Hold on. Come.
What's the price difference between getting a home appliance that's electric versus gas? I've never gone into Apt and I've said, why don't you get an electric, whatever?
Yeah.
Electric.
They are a little bit more expensive at this point, right? But the lifespan is the same. The cost difference is quite marginal. And definitely something you should look into as these alternatives become more and more common.
My other word question is, I get one bill a month from my electric company and I get another mailing. It seems like a waste of paper to tell me how my electricity usage compares to somebody else's. And it just seems like a waste of, I'm opening it up, I'm putting it in recycle, they're spending the money on it. Seems like a weird thing to, why bother sending it to me?
There should be a way to get rid of that. Maybe someone at the tech center can help you. I believe there is a way to eliminate that mailer. Yeah, I agree. It's quite wasteful.
I was wondering, first of all, when you go down 100 feet, you're going to hit water. What do they do about that?
There's restrictions for how close to a water well that you can drill onto. So I'm not an engineer, but I know it's very possible. So there's in Illinois, there's a certain number of distance that you need between like a water well and a geothermal well. So there's balance that happens there, but that's also why geothermal is not a good fit for a lot of homes, especially if you're in kind of a tighter lot and you don't have a lot of flexibility of places to go. That definitely is a challenge that people run into.
The other question I had was, all I can imagine is looking out the window and seeing a big oil rig, like drilling down 100 feet. Is this what would happen?
Yes, so they bring in a drill rig, quite literally, that's what it's called. They've gotten smaller to fit into more narrow spaces, but typically what you're imagining is coming. We're going to be drilling very far.
And then you've got the water table. So I don't know what they can do about that.
I've seen quite a few geothermal systems in my day and we've figured it out. I don't know the engineering behind it per se.
Well, Jim, I do. I am an engineer.
Oh.
So those loops, she talked about the holes being big. They're actually not big. They're just very deep. and they're drilled between 100 and 300 feet, depending on. It is 100% closed loop system. So in other words, the pipes, everything is closed loops, and it's not generally water. It's going to be water and some type of heat transfer fluid, like ethylene glycol, like antifreeze, and it goes down. They are extremely efficient systems. They actually last about twice as long as your normal gas furnace does, because the only energy they use is the energy to circulate. They have a circulation pump that circulates as fluid goes down. So what she said in the beginning was, she's absolutely right. Once you go below, it's actually 10 feet below, right? Everywhere in the world, the temperature is about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can use a combination of heat exchangers and some other technologies to take advantage of the difference in temperatures from the locations. She made some really important points, and thank you for making these points. Oh, no, absolutely not. It's just the same as if you were going to have a well water drilled, right? It comes, it drills them. You'll probably have to redo your lawn, but again, that's certainly part of it. They also have a number of, she talked about the air cooling, but there's also, these are vertical loops. They're also, if you have a large amount of land, you can do a horizontal loop. But I don't think anyone here has that land to do that. But the point that she made was, having an energy audit of your home is a very, very good first step. And one of the things that they'll do, you're going to get a report about an inch thick, and it's going to say, what is the cost versus benefit? Should you put R50 in your attic? Should you get triple pane windows? They will give you the cost versus benefit, and many of the solutions you have will be there. So they might say, hey, you know, for you, it makes sense to get a gas electric dryer. The second important point that she made is that you absolutely positively need to discuss these changes with your electrician before you agree to make them. Because I guarantee you will need to ComEd to drop a larger line. You'll need to upgrade your service. Just for me, just for adding the Tesla that I'm looking for, I got to add a new panel. I need a 60 amp breaker. And it's the same. Each of these devices are so your induction cooktop is running on 220, 50 amp. It's 40 amps for the electric dryer. And so make sure that's your second call. After you figure out that you want to do this, you call your electrician, put that in your budget.
Yeah, very interesting. Several years ago, quite a few years ago, somebody from Cub, I believe, came and spent part of a day here. We asked people to bring in their bills, their energy bills, and you sat down, maybe you scheduled, if there was enough interest, 15 or 20-minute sit downs to go over it and to recommend a program. Now, that would be maybe after the energy office audit that Patrick mentioned. Is that something you might think about doing again, coming and spending part of the day with, if people can sign up and bring in their energy bills?
Of course, we still do those clinics, and I'd be happy to set one up if there's interest here.
I'm just wondering, are all of those tax credits on your website? You know, there's a lot of information there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have a whole handbook on just the IRA.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. If people are interested, I just wanted to report that 3 years ago, before the tax credits were available, I did convert a stove, my kitchen stove, from gas to electric. It did cost me a fair amount of money for the new 220 electrical outlet, because I live in a 6-flat condo building. And then the stove also obviously was an investment, but no more than a gas stove. And since then, my gas bill has been cut in half. I pay the bare minimum for gas. And my electric bill has gone up very slightly, a couple of dollars a month. So for me, it was very worthwhile, a very worthwhile investment. Thank you.
Thank you.
If we had a large transition from
gas to electric. That would mean tremendous increase in the need for our electric grid. Our electric grid is almost not available to handle what we've got now. We want to impose electric vehicles on that, in addition to the electric stoves, electric heating,
Yeah.
et cetera, and the thermal pumps. She talked about how many thermal pumps would you need to have a regular house, heat a regular house?
Ooh, I could not give you a number like that, but I can speak a little bit to,
Well, okay, well, it's just a second.
oh,
You talked about one of the schools, they had how many electric pumps to have one wing of the school?
that's how many wells they dug.
Okay, you had to dig all those wells
Mhm.
to get, say 10 wells to accommodate a wing of a school.
Mhm.
How many wells are gonna dig? And how much power is that gonna take? And what are you gonna, how are you gonna generate the power? Generate the power and electricity with natural gas. So what's the net saving?
If we go, oh, the slide went away. It's okay. I think that you can really reduce, like a geothermal system is going to be much more efficient, like hundreds of times more efficient than a natural gas boiler, and the emissions go down dramatically, even compared to an air source heat pump, which is already going to be more efficient than a gas boiler. I do understand and really hear your concern about ComEd's readiness as we're talking about electrification. All of our utilities are governed by a body called the Illinois Commerce Commission, and they have requested all of the Illinois electric utilities to provide a plan, a multi-year plan for how they plan on handling this increase in demand. I think one thing that's going to be really key to that is energy efficiency. So if our homes are efficient, we're using less to begin with. That's going to be really important. And ComEd claims that they are growing and building in a way that, and working on transmission in a way that can accommodate this transition. The ICC recently rejected their 3-year plan. So they said, what you're showing is not good enough, come back again with a revisal. So that gives us a sense that maybe the ICC intends to be a little harder on ComEd, wants ComEd to show real modeling and real data to prove that they can handle it. But this is something that we are very worried about. This is something that CUB and other agencies are working really hard to try to understand how to hold utilities accountable as we move forward.
I would just comment that when we had a assessment of our house done, our windows were a significant issue for loss of our home heat energy. And once we redid all of our windows with double pane and ceiling, it significantly reduced our energy loss and increased our efficiency. So
Yeah.
that was for us a significant issue.
Definitely. That's why the energy efficiency process is going to be so key.
Where should we go to get one of those energy efficiency audits?
The Department of, so I'm assuming you also want to take advantage of the tax credit that comes with the energy audit. So there are quite a few brands or certifications of energy audits that you can get. And the Department of Energy will maintain a list of contractors for each of those certification programs. So if there's a Department of Energy website, maybe I can help send over that link in the slides if you're interested.
I was going to ask Ernie, how much did the windows cost and how long would it take you to save up enough money from the energy efficient windows?
Very real question.
It cost about $10,000 to redo the entire windows of our entire house. We have a big window in the front of our house, 2 huge windows, and then all kinds of other windows. And it was a significant cost at the time, but I think over the years, over time, it has been a significant saving. I couldn't tell you how much of a saving it is because I think this is about 25 years ago. So
let's see if I've got that in me.
I don't know how much it has risen in cost, but to do real energy efficient windows is a significant cost initially. But I think it's worth it. At least it was worth it for us.
Arnie, can I cover the chat question?
Absolutely.
Alan has his hand up. Alan, you're unmuted. Ask your question and your camera's off. If you want to put it on, you can, but go ahead and ask your question, please.
Okay, thank you. Several years ago, I saw them digging up the entire playground at Glencoe Middle School. And it was very interesting to see them install, I don't know how many pipes. And they said it was a geothermal, a major geothermal installation. No one at the school knew how much they were saving or if they were saving anything. And I couldn't find anybody that had any data to know. I was wondering if you know, with a major installation like that, how many years is the payback?
I don't know for the Glencoe School District. I was looking it up, and I think also because it is a school district, they're not as open with their information. That church that we were just looking at, that is 22,000 square feet. I have it in my notes. The payback period was, the total cost of that project was $350,000 with a payback period of 30 years. Yeah, so you're looking at a long-term investment that you're making.
Wow. Joey, I have another comment from chat. There's more questions from the audience here in the auditorium, but the questions that related here on chat was how much good information you provided in a short period of time and how they might be able to have access to it. Now, what we've told them is that you permitted yourself to be taped, so we are going to have a recording within a couple weeks that anyone can pick up. But your slides were very valuable. We have about 200 members of the Tuesday Club. Would you have permission to let us distribute your slide to the group of Tuesday Club members? And if not, could we go online and pick that up? So we're looking to try to revisit the information you provided on slides.
I can definitely, I don't know who the best person, maybe Jill.
Jill,
I will get
please.
over my slides and also some of the links to the things I've mentioned today.
Yeah,
So
let me repeat what I heard you say, and so we can confirm that. The slide package that you presented, which was very valuable, you will be able to give that to Jill, and she will be able to distribute that to the people who will automatically get that if they're members of the Tuesday Club. Is that okay
Yes.
with you? All right,
Yes, that
thank
is
you.
great for me.
And of course, your presentation has been taped, so they'll have access to that. Okay, I'm turning it over to the auditorium.
Okay. Hello, I hope you can hear me. I'm a village trustee for the village of Glencoe. We have 2 geothermal projects underway and a third one under consideration. Both West School and Central School are geothermal. The projected payback is 7 to 10 years for both projects. They seem to be closing in closer to the 7-year than the 10-year on that. We're also building in conjunction with some support from the County Forest Preserve, we're building a new clubhouse. And one of the conditions that we're meeting is what they call the LEED certification, which is a certification process for energy efficiency. And our board just at our last meeting suggested that we will also do geothermal in that particular project. I do want to talk to you a little bit after. We have a geothermal with a twist in that we have a pond that we can go to, and it may be more efficient for us to use water from the pond rather than stick the probes into the earth, but we'll see that. Personally, I've investigated, I have a 100-year-old house in Glencoe, leaky old house. We have done the windows and replaced, well, about 15 years ago, the HVAC. But in talking to the installers, the payback is still 15 or 10 to 15 years, depending on the manufacturer, at least for our single family old leaky house. But every case is unique, and I'd encourage you to, work with a professional in the area to understand I'd like to look at things in terms of payback. How long will it make sense? I have another favorite saying. I've seen the future and it's expensive. Okay. And I don't see the energy prices dropping a lot in the future.
Anything else?
Online.
This is Jill. I think Ron has turned himself off. There are no more chat questions. Maybe I should just hand the mic over to Bill just to say our final goodbyes, or Dick, whoever should take it. Thank you for a fascinating program. I really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you for having me.
Thank you, Joey. Jim Otis and I visited, we found a geothermal contractor right nearby here. And we visited him last week after chasing him by phone for weeks. And he's probably going to be making a presentation next year sometime here. So, we'll keep on top of this that way. Thank you, Joey.